Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time to touch base with us and share your lunch hour with us today on our February Innovation Hour. It's exciting to be able to connect with all of you wherever you are and to be able to share the stories of innovation that folks are doing throughout Metropolitan Water District. I'm sure many of you have seen some of the videos and some of the stories that have been posted in our water talks each week related to the good work that employees are doing and focusing on doing things a little bit differently and improving as we go forward. And we're going to hear some great stories again today. But again, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time this morning to spend with us. Today, we are having three leaders of innovation focus in for us on sustainability and our innovative efforts with respect to sustainability. We've got three great stories and information that'll be shared with you. We're going to start off with Malinda Stalvey. Many of you know Melinda. She works in our environmental planning section, and she's actually the project manager for the climate action plan that is being developed. We've actually never had a climate action plan at Metropolitan. This is a way of looking at all of the various projects that are going on at Met, folding them together into a single plan that will provide coverage under our environmental requirements, but also will allow us to focus on how we are managing and reducing our carbon footprint as a district. A wonderful new opportunity, a new plan that's being developed, and Melinda is working with a team of folks to develop it, shepherding it through the board process, and I'm very much looking forward to ultimately getting board approval on that plan. We're then going to move to Nguyen. Ha has been leading our efforts with respect to the development of our energy sustainability plan. Again, this is a process working with the board and looking at our facilities and the way that we can manage our energy and future projects that make us more efficient through the energy sustainability plan. And finally, we're going to have Cheryl Auger, who is actually our cybersecurity team manager, keeping us safe here at the district. But Cheryl has also brought together a grassroots efforts with staff throughout the district interested in sustainability by forming a sustainability employee interest group. Wonderful discussions happening in this group that will ultimately affect Metropolitan's operating policies, but also sharing information with us as employees that we can do both here at Metropolitan and our roles at Metropolitan, but also at home in our daily lives. These are great examples of innovation and continuous improvement here with a focus on sustainability, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussions today. Thank you again for joining us. And with that, Melinda, I'd like to hand it off to you. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about the Climate Action Plan? Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. Okay. Can you see? It looks like I might. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Looks great.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me here to speak today. I'm honored to be able to share the platform with these two amazing women today. Like all good solutions, good ideas come from a challenging problem. Metropolitan's Climate Action Plan was born out of a constraints analysis for the proposed Regional Recycled Water Program. Environmental planning was tasked with analyzing proposed alignments and identifying issues that we might encounter during the California Environmental Quality Act or CEQA analysis. CEQA requires analysis of environmental impacts for every project undertaken by Metropolitan and has undergone many changes over recent years, one of which is to analyze greenhouse gas or GHG impacts. The Regional Recycled Water Program would be the first new program at Metropolitan with operational impacts since this new category was added, and as it turns out, would have a significant GHG profile from a new treatment plant located at the LA County Sanitation District in Carson, and 3 new pump facilities to pump the treated water to its destination. CEQA requires that the new impact be feasibly mitigated. For environmental planning, the question then becomes what is feasible. In the case of GHG, several large local projects have committed to net zero emissions. Thus, it is hard to argue that we can also not feasibly mitigate our emissions to net zero. Normally, CEQA requires the analysis of individual projects. For each project, an emissions analysis would be prepared, and Metropolitan would need to reduce or offset those project emissions. We could offset through the purchase of carbon credits or other creative methods, but that can be extremely expensive, and in the case of the Recycle Water Program, would add a significant cost per acre foot of water. Because projects like the Recycle Water Program include significant operational emissions, the cost to offset emissions would only increase over time. A new alternative offered under CEQA is to prepare a climate action plan. This new and innovative way to offset emissions would allow Metropolitan to prepare a programmatic document that would not only cover the significant new emissions from the proposed Recycle Water Program, but also cover GHG emissions from all covered projects. More importantly, the plan allows Metropolitan to programmatically offset those emissions, which provides an opportunity for Metropolitan to use a suite of options to reduce emissions. This approach allows Metropolitan to leverage its significant investments in water conservation, clean energy purchases, and other programs to show emissions reductions. The CAP would be one of the first of its kind for a water agency. To develop the CAP, we needed support from executive management and the board. Staff prepared an analysis of the cost associated with new emissions and showed how we could use our existing programs to our advantage and ultimately save Metropolitan money. With the support of management and the board, a cross-disciplinary team was assembled, which consists of members from engineering, WSO, WRM, administrative services, external affairs, and legal. In order for the CAP to be used to offset emissions under CEQA, it must contain required components, which include an inventory of Metropolitan's past and existing emissions, and a forecast of future emissions. This was a complicated process that required help from across Metropolitan. The inventory included Metropolitan's past emissions back to 1990, which became our baseline, and a complete inventory of GHG emissions from our operations and construction projects. We even characterized emissions from our facilities' water, gas, electric usage, and waste pickup. The first year that we had complete data was for 2005. Next, a forecast of future emissions was prepared by estimating construction emissions from upcoming CIP projects and our expected operational emissions. What is really unique about Metropolitan is that most of its emissions are from electricity used to power the CRA pumps and to treat water. Thus, our future emissions are directly tied to the amount of water pumped from the CRA, which varies significantly from year to year. To capture the variable emissions, the forecast built off the Urban Water Management Plan forecasts and analyzed 3 scenarios: a prolonged drought period, which required higher than normal pumping, an average pumping year, and a series of wet years where higher than normal allocation of state water allowed reduced pumping on the CRA. This range allowed us to forecast the emissions reductions that would be required in the future. But how would we measure our reductions? We needed an approach that would capture our GHG reductions even with variable emissions from CRA pumping. Metropolitan staff settled on a novel approach, a carbon budget. We looked at our baseline year as our starting point and chose the state goal of carbon neutrality by 2045 as our GHG reduction target. From there, we drew a straight line from our 1990 emissions to 0 in 2045. We calculated the area under the curve, and that became our carbon budget. Thus, even in some years, our emissions could be higher as long as we stayed within the total budget and continued to show progress reducing GHG emissions. We are confident that Metropolitan will be able to meet its goal. The work does not stop at finding out what Metropolitan has done, though. The CAP is a commitment from the agency to reduce its emissions, and though our significant conservation efforts have given us a head start on meeting the goal of carbon neutrality, it does not get us all the way there. A significant amount of work was required to identify new GHG reduction measures that would help Metropolitan achieve its goal. These new measures had to be cost-effective and achievable. To find solutions, our team developed a range of alternatives, leaving nothing out. Our initial list had over 200 potential measures. We then narrowed the measures by determining what is applicable to Metropolitan, and even further by finding the GHG reduction measures that Metropolitan can feasibly implement while still meeting the co-equal goals of being both cost-effective and achievable. Lastly, we needed to ensure commitment, first from the affected departments, then from management, and ultimately from the board. By keeping the goal in mind, we were able to identify a number of solutions that will ensure that Metropolitan will meet the goal of carbon neutrality by 2045, while also leaving room for flexibility should some projects not be implemented. To ensure our goal will be met, an implementation plan was developed, which identified a team that will be responsible for ensuring that emissions are tracked and that reductions are implemented. Built into the plan are updates every 5 years that ensures that Metropolitan can adapt to changing conditions and add new technologies as necessary to keep us on track to meet the goal of the plan. The CAP is scheduled to be released for public review in March and to be adopted by the board in the summer of this year. Lastly, I'd like to share some lessons learned that have helped to keep this complex project on track. First, think outside the box. In the beginning, do not limit yourself by saying, this is possible, this is not possible. Often new ideas are born from possibilities, so stay open by not limiting yourselves. Next, be ready for others' first response to be no. No is an acceptable answer once an idea has been investigated, but often people's first reaction is no without examining all the possibilities. Keeping possibility open allows for opportunities to find creative solutions that may not have been possible if you'd stopped at no. Don't be limited by others' no, show them what's possible. Next, adaptation. Adaptation is key. Even as an innovator, you can get stuck on an idea. Be willing to listen, stay open to new ideas, and adapt. On that same note, know your limitations and be willing to say, I don't know. Being willing to say, I don't know, opens you up to learn. And when you stay open to learning, you become more willing to listen to the ideas of others, which can expand your horizons infinitely. Next, missteps are an important part of the process. Learning what doesn't work is as important as learning what does. One lesson that's been very important to me in particular is to not take feedback personally. I have found that sometimes the deeper I get into a project, I sometimes lose sight of the big picture, thinking it needs to be a certain way. Feedback from others provides an opportunity to make the project better. It provides a source of improvement, and in the end, your project is always better for it. And lastly, there are always setbacks, unforeseen circumstances like COVID, for example. Patience and determination are so important. They allow you to keep your eye on the prize and ensure that in the end, you have an excellent product. With that, I would like to turn it over to Ha, first I'd like to thank the Climate Action Plan Working Group for all of the efforts over these last couple of years putting this Climate Action Plan together. And then with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ha, without whose work in emissions reporting and her work on the Energy Sustainability Plan, this Climate Action Plan would not be possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda. Again, thank you, Melinda. So a very nice note at the end. Hi, my name is Nguyen, and I'm going to today going to talk about the energy sustainability plan. It's a teamwork for the last for more than 18 months with a lot of people in the district. And then the second part of my presentation is about the implementation, the first key element that we recommended to the board. So the energy sustainability plan was prepared with the goal to propose projects that are cost effective and help move Metropolitan toward a more sustainable future. So these are the objectives that we use to prepare our plan. And first, is to contain costs and reduce exposure to Metropolitan exposure to price volatility. Next is to define strategy to increase operational flexibility to respond to the developing energy price dynamic and to improve the resiliency of Metropolitan energy portfolio. And finally, to develop a framework of sustainable actions focused on energy reliability, conservation, and adaptation, as Melinda mentioned previously, for now and in the future. And in this effort, we also coordinating our evaluation closely with the Climate Action Plan. So the plan was prepared with a few, some key drivers that I will just touch base on the main two key. This is mainly with the changing energy landscape. So the energy landscape in the West is continuing change in a dramatic evolution, as you can see here. The clean energy, first the clean energy mandate, SB 100, which expanded the prior legislation to increase California renewable portfolio standard from 50% to 60% by 2030. And the state ultimate goal for energy sector is to reach 100% carbon-free energy by 2045, and that through implementation of technologies such as solar energy or hydrogen fuel, just to name a few. The second bill is the AB 32, the California Air Resource Board cap and trade program. Is designed to reduce California greenhouse gas emission to 40% below 1990 level by 2030, and that through market-based carbon pricing. So what is this impact of these two bills on the energy landscape? So in 2013, the CAISO, California Independent System Operator, who oversees the operation of California electrical power system, published this famous dot curve to illustrate the impact of these bills on the grid. So during this chart will show the forecasted net load curves to illustrate between 2013 and 2013. And what you see is the dark belly that reflects the increased level of solar penetration over time from 2013 to 2020 here. So the peak as such has shifted now between midday, say noon to 4 or 5, to the evening hour, where the ramp that when solar is not there anymore, the grid had to respond quickly and could ramp up to 13 megawatt hour in 3 hours. And that is the new challenge to the grid management. So because of that, what they do, the first thing they do is to impose the cost change. So midday power price has decreased, and then intervening hour carbon allowance cost increase the energy cost. And that is the impact of the wholesale market, which is the Colorado River Aqueduct pumping operation. The change of the wholesale market are being reflected in the retail price as well. So what you see here is the time of use tariff that we pay to utility from the rest of our facilities. SCE, LADWP, and that is for us as well, right? So before, the time of use is between 12 and 6 p.m. that you see the orange on peak. Now is from 5 to 10, which is the on peak now. So the retail rate also will be increased tremendously to recover Wi-Fi costs because of the transmission line improvement and the insurance fund. So with that, it will impact our cost of operation in terms of energy price. So I'm going to present you quickly the approach that we use to prepare the energy sustainability plan. We would like to use an innovative and holistic multi-phase planning approach instead of just taking the cost, identify the project and calculate the cost. So the first thing we did is we conduct a peer review of energy management plans, and we conduct workshops with multiple water utility to summarize the state of the knowledge of energy sustainability practice in the water sector. Then we collect our baseline operation data and constraint at Metropolitan, along with the energy price outlook and projected energy market scenario. Then we establish a list of potential renewable energy or energy storage projects. And these projects then were assessed through a financial and environmental analysis. And then we perform a comparison of these project performance using a multi-criteria decision analysis that look not only the cost, but the flexibility of the project, the reliability criteria, look at the reliability criteria and adaptability of the project. We also perform 4 scenarios considering the water and energy nexus to stress test the project. And we finalize the energy sustainability plan with recommendation and roadmap. We have near-term, mid-term, and long-term action, and we plan to monitor all the side posts regarding to the policy, energy policy, regulation, energy and carbon price, and the water and energy supply reliability. So this is the key finding that I was talking about for near-term, mid-term, and long-term. For near-term, we recommend the implementation of the battery energy storage at our facility. Another action near-term is to redirect the Yorba Linda hydroelectric power plant to directly serve the Dimmer treatment plant. And last but not least, to implement the energy management best practice. Our facility have been upgraded over years, and Metropolitan has used the opportunity to implement energy efficiency lighting and process improvement. But we would like to take these measures to the next level with more energy management best practice. And we will start with a couple pilot projects at the Weymouth water treatment plant. And then I will not go through the midterm and long-term, but the energy sustainability plan is available on the Metropolitan website. And I invite you to take a look at that we have much more detail on that. I have it here. So for the next few slides, I will turn into the implementation of the first key recommendation, which is the best project at MWD. So the battery energy storage system is what? It's primarily a peak load reduction technology. It stores energy during off-peak and super off-peak hours, and then it discharges the stored energy for use during on-peak and mid-peak hour. That is to manage our operational costs. So what you can see here, the system could be placed inside a shipping storage container with the equipment inside. The proposed BESS will be paired with the existing solar facility at Jensen, Skinner, and Weymouth treatment plant. The excess solar energy will be stored for later use instead of sending this energy back to the grid at a much cheaper price. And the battery at OC8A will be connected to the grid only. The BESS will be installed with a microgrid configuration, and that is to support the California Power, the CPUC, California Power Public Utility Commission. They have a goal for critical infrastructure resiliency, which is our water treatment plant, and its reliability. And that's why these projects are eligible to receive significant enhanced incentive. And we are currently in the design phase. And the goal is to go back to the board to award a construction contract in September of this year. And as you know, these projects, or the people who work with me on these projects, including Melinda, these projects are subject to a very aggressive schedule, which is required by the incentive program. So I just would like to talk a very high level of the BESS concept. What is it, a BESS system? So basically, it has three main components. First, you have the battery. The battery technology provides the power and the energy capabilities, and that are chemistry dependent. So we have battery, the type of battery is lead acid, lithium ion, flow, sodium base, or just to name a few. Lithium ion is the most popular and the most commonly used, and that's the type battery that we're going to use for our facility. The second block is the power conversion system. What it does is to convert the DC power from the battery to the AC power to send into the grid, and it's bidirectional because the battery charge and discharge, right? And the third component is the control system that will take the input from the battery system and the power conversion system to charge and discharge following a scheme, a strategy established by us. This is the general layout of a BESS system. You can see inside of the container itself, you have the battery. The battery has monitor and control system by itself. And then you have the DC switch, that is, then you can isolate the battery in case you need to replace for maintenance. It goes through a power conversion system or an inverter, convert it to AC, and then send it outside of the box, if I can say, and go to the AC transformer to step it up and send it to the load, to the grid. And for our facility, the design is to send it to our switchgear of the facility. So we talk about peak shaving a lot. And I will try with this graph, this chart, to explain the concept of peak shaving. So what we have here is the Jensen load profile for 3 days from June 1st to June 3rd of last year. So the horizontal axis is the time, right? From 0 hour to 24 hour, 24 hour, and 24 hour. And then we have the load, the yellow cloud that you see there. That's the solar generation at Jensen. So someday, these 3 days, you see that we have solar excess that we will, when we have the battery, we will charge the battery with that excess energy during the time that the solar is online. And when the solar is not available, we will discharge the battery. So the black line that you see is the load of Jensen before we have without the battery. That's what we pay to LADWP. With the green area that you see that we use the battery energy to charge, to use discharge the battery to use for our load. The green area, this is what we really buy from LADWP with the battery. And you can see the blue arrow, this is the decrease in the peak LADWP that we can save in terms of the cost. So that's in high level, that's how we do, we do the peak shaving every day, every hour at our facility. And another benefit in managing our peak load and demand with the battery system is to reduce the plant greenhouse gas footprint. This chart here is the daily California grid greenhouse gas emission. Every day CAISO release this chart. And as you can see, this chart has the same duck curve shape. And why? that because in the middle of the day, the power is largely from renewable energy with basically zero greenhouse gas emission. So therefore, by using or charging battery and store that energy during this time for later use on peak time, we reduce our greenhouse gas footprint. I would like to quickly show you the two locations that at Jensen and Skinner that we, during the preliminary design phase, we have some proposed location, and we now recommend at Jensen to install the best system at location site number 3. It's just in front of the ozone building that you can see there. And then this one is at Skinner water treatment plant. You see here, the proportion site location number 1 is close to the switchgear building. But after our analysis, we think the location site number 2 is more advantageous because it's close to the solar field. And that's the recommended location going to the final design. And I certainly hope that next time when you visit Jensen or Skinner, you will be able to check out Metropolitan latest innovative work. And to wrap up my presentation, I would like to add that I believe that we have a good energy sustainability plan, but we are looking forward to implement all these recommendations. But what makes a good plan a great plan is when we have the buy-in from all of you. And from that, I will turn to Cheryl because this is really a good transition to her talk. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cheryl Auger, and I am the sustainability lead for the Sustainability Interest Group at MWD. And let me just hope I'm in slide presentation mode. Okay, so we started talking about this Sustainability Interest Group about a little over a year ago when a lot of us were concerned about global warming and about something I like to call mindless consumption and things that are just pretty much getting us into this state where we're not really. So we got together, we talked with HR, figured out like, well, what type of be starting, and we kind of set up some goals and guidelines, and then had our official first meeting last January in 2020. I have to say, I think maybe 57 or so people attended the meeting, and we went around the room and introduced ourselves. And I was so impressed with every single person that attended that meeting about what they had to say, what they had to offer. That everybody came from a diverse background, and it was clear that with the group of people that we had, that we would be able to really be successful with whatever we had to do. It was amazing stories, amazing opportunities. So basically, we started out with just establishing a mission and goals. And the first one is, like, what more can we do? We don't have authority or power or budget or staff, but we can influence and educate and engage employees to promote sustainability and make sure that practices are sustainable at all facilities. And we can also meet and learn to see what other sustainability programs are doing at other companies and establish goals and priorities for met. Definitely, MWD is so unique with all of our different facilities. It seems like there's so much more of an opportunity to promote sustainability. So some of the things that we kicked around in that first day include creating zero waste facilities. And I honestly think that this would be one of the greatest things we could do from not only an environmental standpoint, but also a showcasing of Metropolitan's talent. Like if we could just take Gene Camp and start implementing biodigesters so people can use their organic waste right at the facility and use the gas from the methane from the biodigester to cook with or use for other purposes like heating water, growing food, etc. Like some of those things would be great to start at those facilities. We also talked about fossil-free facilities and fleet, and I think we heard this morning in the town hall that that's definitely kind of happening, and if not completed. Phasing out single-use plastics. A lot of people don't even understand how important it is to just stop using plastic because of the resource consumption, natural resource consumption, such as water, and the certainly the environmental impacts, and also the impacts on greenhouse gas emissions, which we talked about a little bit earlier with Ha's presentation. And then we have other things like, planting trees, increasing use of public transportation, embedding sustainability into operations, many different things that could really help us not only reduce our carbon footprint, but also probably improve our lives overall and health overall. So, of course, I mentioned earlier that we really don't have any authority. So we don't have organizational power. So we certainly, Melinda's a part of the sustainability interest group, but she also has her own climate action plan, which we got to hear a little bit about earlier. And for baselines and those types of things, we really don't have the information at our disposal. So we're always, we have to request things. We also have full-time jobs. So it's a little bit of a coordination, but hopefully what we can do with our sustainability interest group is important enough that we can, influence and make change. So we actually planned two amazing events at the beginning of last year. The refillery was supposed to be a regularly scheduled event, and the refillery was going to come to Union Station, and everybody could bring their empty laundry detergent or dish detergent or their shampoo bottles and conditioner bottles and just refill them right there and take them home. Unfortunately, the week before, everybody was sent home for COVID, and the refillery hasn't been able to come yet. So hopefully when we get back, there'll be a regularly scheduled event for sustainability. We also were going to celebrate Earth Day. It's a 50th year celebration for Earth Day. And we were going to have the a newsletter go out. We were going to have events in the courtyard. We were going to have sustainable giveaways, but none of that came to fruition. But we did have a couple of events. We had some brown bags, and two of those brown bags were on the plastic crisis and Burbank recycling. And in the plastic crisis, we learned about how less than 9% of plastic is actually recyclable. And sadly, the majority of that was going to Malaysia and other Asian countries, which from a sustainability perspective is certainly bad. I mentioned that plastic generation, actually the full life cycle of plastic creates 10% of greenhouse gas emissions and uses 44,000 gallons of water to make 1 ton. Amy Hams from Burbank Recycling talked about how there's really not a market for those things that are recyclable. Basically, containers made out of 1, 2, the little resins chasing arrow signs, and some things made out of plastic number 5. But she said, even if these things can be recycled, if there's no market for these things, then it doesn't really matter. So we really need to create those end markets that will use that type of plastic. Additionally, we also need to make sure that manufacturers only use plastics in their products and their packaging that are made from plastics 1, 2, and 5, and also ensure that they are taking recycled content into their products. We also started working on a fossil fuel free investments. So we believe as not only as a sustainability interest group members, but as Metropolitan Water employees, that we're entitled to have options in our 457 and 401k that we don't have to go through and have individually like pick out stocks for ourselves. We really want our risk manager to work with our financial institution to identify some good options for us that are readily available in our portfolio that do not invest in dirty energy, that do invest in our clean futures and our clean health. So we reached out to our unions and the 3 primary unions, and they are discussing it right now. So we're awaiting that response, but hopefully that will be happening pretty soon. Oh my gosh, it was such a great event. We had a brown bag last month on composting. It's kind of interesting that more than 30% of the waste that we generate is organic waste. And unfortunately, because California, well, LA County has more than 10 million people in it. And you can understand where we've got a lot of waste to manage. Imagine that, 10 million people, 30% of their waste is organic material. Where is it going to go in a sound and healthy manner? Well, we truck it out to Victorville and it gets mixed with a slurry, and that slurry gets mixed with plastics, and then we landfill the slurry with, not landfill, but we line the growth or the land with the slurry that has microplastics in it, which we ingest, and so does the soil. So it's not a healthy way to manage our organic material. The healthiest way is to do it right at the source. And so obviously reducing your food waste is number one. Secondly, if you can compost at home, that's the best thing you can do. Biodigester, I mentioned earlier, that's a great thing to do. But even in an apartment, you can do bokashi. And bokashi is an ideal way to manage your own waste, and you can use that fertilizer for a tree or the gardens or whatever. So going forward, we are definitely going to be focused on sustainable investments. We're going to work with Devin to implement a broad sustainability or operating policy. We are going to, oh yeah, this is great. We're going to actually get to see the whole plan from Melinda at a brown bag. We are going to be able to hear from one of our technical experts about the microplastics that she's measured in different water bodies. We're going to work on instilling sustainability into purchasing decisions. A lot of us don't think about this, but even something as minute as an envelope with a plastic window in it, that's just been garbage. We need to really think about making sure that the materials that we buy are suitable for composting or management, recycling on the other side. So that's one of the things that we'll be working on. So a couple of thoughts from me. I talked about mindless consumption, and mindless consumption is definitely the time we're in. We have things like fast fashion that to typify the type of time we're in. Running, what is it called, like racing with the Joneses or something like that. But it's to our detriment. It's to the other species' detriment, especially when we're talking about or thinking about the amount of resources that are being consumed by our bad habits. And I've been thinking about this for obviously a couple of years, but I finally, the other day, I knew that 1 pound of plastic took 22 gallons of water to make. So I've always kind of known that. And I've always known that 1 water bottle uses twice as much water as it contains to make that bottle, which is perverse by any sort of sense of normalcy or humanity. But when you start extrapolating that out, knowing that there's, before COVID, 335 million tons of plastic are being generated around the world. And if you know that 4,400 gallons of water are used to create just 1 ton of plastic, and you do the math, that's 14.7 trillion gallons of water that are being used to make plastic that is sometimes added to your McDonald's Happy Meal and is going to be in the trash or somewhere lost in seconds. So when you extrapolate that to thinking about water shortages on Earth, even the water shortages we're facing here in Southern California and having to build the aqueduct to the tunnel to deliver more water to us, when we are just squandering it at an alarming rate on a wasteful product or products. So besides reducing your consumption on fast fashion and plastic, one thing that you can really do right now if you wanted to help the environment and reduce climate change or just help mitigate climate change is switch to 100% renewable. There are a lot of options that are provided right now from LADWP, Southern California Edison, Clean Power Alliance, and Pasadena Water and Power. So those are all great options, but it's said to be the one single best thing that you can personally do to have a better environment. So thank you, and I'll hand it over to, I'm not sure, but somebody will take the lead.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, and thank you to Ha and to Melinda. Those were excellent presentations. You are, all three of you, just so impressive in the work that you're doing to make a more sustainable metropolitan. So we have a couple of questions here from our audience. I wanted to ask them to you. First one is for you, Ha. We have a question from John. Is solar in the desert, so large-scale solar along the CRA, really feasible given the added infrastructure costs such as transmission lines and lack of immediate demand centers?
Yes, you're correct, John. It's, solar out of the desert is not an option for now, and I think for a long term in terms for us, Metropolitan, to develop. But the plan is to monitor what's going on out there, because we always had questioned that you guys have a lot of land out there, so how come you don't want to develop solar? And their developer probably would want to do it, and we will monitor to see what is the impact of that on the wholesale market out there, right? So yeah, but for now it's not something we think we're going to develop ourselves, because for the CIA, we have contract with hydro with Hoover Dam, right? So what we buy is very little supplemental energy for now. But I think the dynamic of the wholesale market is changing a lot. And I think that Sean Bailey Group is adjusting on the way how they're going to have a strategy doing that to save us money and even sometimes make money. I don't know if you guys heard the case of Texas at the real-time price that people pay the bill at the retail of $17,000 for a few days. That's what the reality of the wholesale market. But we luckily in California, the retail is not like that. It's fixed price, but that's an example of what happened in the energy market.
Great, thank you, Ha. We have a couple of other questions that have come in. So let's see. This question is from Dean. And this one is for you, Cheryl. One of your bullets regards an ideal carbon nitrogen ratio in composting. Can you explain that? How do I know which is carbon and which is nitrogen? So he composts all his food waste and he supplements with lawn waste from time to time. I'm sure you're very happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy to hear that. And that's the most amazing thing. When we had Christine from 301 Organics speak at our organic lunch and learn the brown bag, I don't think any of us knew that there's a specific 30 carbon to 1 nitrogen formula that you need to obtain in order to get this great compost, manure, whatever that you call it, for your garden. And I have seen her students organic compost waste. It's like huge, it's dark, it's rich, it's aerated, and I'm going to be taking her class because mine doesn't look like that, and I know I'm jealous, and I want my garden to have all that, you know, nutritious composting. So I would recommend just, you know, and actually, interestingly, she said if MWD pays for any of us to go to the 301 Organics class, we can take that as part of our carbon budget. Melinda would know more about that, but I think that would be really exciting for all of us to learn how to do great composting.
Yeah, that would be. That's great. Thank you. Melinda, we've got a question here for you from Russ Ryan, and he is asking if you can give some examples of credit options Metropolitan can use to apply from cap and trade for Metropolitan to use in its strategies options.
So thank you for the question. Not so much for the cap and trade, but for some of the options that we can use. We looked at a number of different ways to reduce GHG emissions, and some of those will be the power that we have to purchase electricity that is green energy, and some of the other options are implementation of programs like carbon sequestration. Carbon sequestration is going to require still a lot of research and development before it can be quantified how much carbon can be offset from different kinds of projects. And I know in the Delta region, we have a number of projects that we're looking at, and also in our PV lands, we're looking at some of the farming projects as well to be able to identify places where we could reduce emissions through carbon sequestration. Right now, there's a lot of work still being done on how much carbon is sequestered, and then therefore how much we could take as GHG reductions. And there's also some questions about like reservoirs and how much actually reservoirs and lakes emit carbon, not just use it as a carbon sink. So there's quite a bit of work to be done, and we're using this as a long-term solution, which is something that will be looked at over 2030 to 2045, as opposed to the more short-term solution of between now and 2030. So thank you for the question.
That's great. And then we got one more question for you, Melinda, and this will be the last audience question. And then I have one quick question and we're going to wrap things up. So who originated the idea and spearheaded the climate action plan to get it to board approval? Was it environmental planning, engineering, somebody else? Can you fill us in on that?
It was the brainchild of environmental planning. We actually, one of our past employees, Tom Napoli, was a real good CEQA expert, and he had the idea that we could use this climate action plan. We worked together to be able to come up with the idea, to present it to management, and then he has since retired, and I took over the program, and then environmental planning developed or we worked to find a group that could work together, that could give us all of the solutions and the options. And then that group has since moved the entire climate action plan forward. But environmental planning is the spearhead for the plan.
What an impressive effort. That's really neat to hear how that all came together. So I have one final question. There's a couple other questions that have come in. For those of you that have typed in questions, we will get back to you offline. I wanted to ask this one question of our three speakers today. You all are truly trailblazers. You have chartered new territory for us here at Metropolitan in the world of sustainability. And I know this requires you to be fearless and stay motivated. So I want to challenge you with a short answer. So in 1 to 3 words, tell us what keeps you going. And let's start with you, Cheryl.
So what keeps me going is my concern.
She did it. She did it in 2 words. We're all waiting for something else. At least I was. I told her in 1 to 3 words. Yes, that's great. Thank you. Ha, what about you?
The people I work with that give me, well, it's not 3 words, but I can go, that give me more motivation than ever, you know, it's like Melinda, Cheryl.
Yeah, the teamwork, and it's clear that you all do work very closely together and that your work overlaps. So it's really been neat to see that today during this webinar. And then Melinda, what about you?
I have to say just a couple of things. Curiosity. I just have an intense curiosity and an intense desire to learn. So
those are great things to keep all of us going. Thank you for being such inspiring speakers today and speaking so passionately about the work that you do. It's really great work, and it was really nice to hear about how you've made it all happen and come together. For everyone online, I just want to let you know that this is being recorded. So we will have the recording available up on our intranet page, our innovation intranet page, which you can find on, if you look on the menu on the left-hand side under resources. Also there, we have additional stories about our employees and the new ideas and approaches they're applying to their work. If you or someone you know, one of your colleagues is doing something like this and you want them to be featured in a future innovation hour or a future Water Talk article or video, please, there's a form there that you can fill out. Please take a minute to fill out the form and let us know, and we'll be in touch with you. There's also information about our Innovation Council, so take a look at all of that. Our next innovation hour is going to be in April, and our topic is going to be innovation in the Bay Delta. So look out for that. Thank you again to all of you for joining us. Thank you to all of our speakers as well. And thank you to our iHub team for supporting us and our innovation support team as well too. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Bye.
thank you.